This happened to me and my girlfriend back in the summer of 2014. This all took place in South Carolina, and my girlfriend and I wanted to take a camping trip. We initially tried to go to a place 45 miles from our hometown, but they were going to charge us double what we thought we were going to pay. We decided to go back when it just occurred to me there's a spot very close to where we live. Now I will say, it's more boondocking and off the grid. We didn't have to pay for anything, we just parked the car and got out. There's a historical bridge and trail, also some of the oldest railroad tracks in the south. We got there before sunset, so we had plenty of time to pitch the tent and set everything up. There were a few cars when we arrived, but they were most likely hikers and would be gone by nightfall. The only thing that made us uncomfortable was a busted up and rusted old white van with no license plate. We both pointed that out, thinking it was weird, but we shrugged it off and started walking to a good place to set up camp. After several hours, around 3 a.m., following some quality time spent with her and taking in all the nature and then going to sleep, we started hearing this obscure singing and walking around our tent. Anytime you hear commotion that early in the morning, nothing good can happen out of it. I peered my head out the tent to see what was going on. I didn't see anything or anyone, but nonetheless, I didn't want to stay in that area when we were both freaked out. Just because I couldn't see it, it doesn't mean it's not there. I barely did a decent walk around our tent. As we were quietly gathering our belongings, we swore we heard the singing get louder. I recall words in the song he was singing had, "Now won't y'all come out," followed by this raspy laugh. Once we finally packed the tent, that was when crunching on the leaves and his humming is what we heard. So we knew this guy was close by. We booked it. I grabbed her hand and threw the tent and folding chairs on my back. We made sure to run the opposite way from where all his noise was coming from. Luckily, we set camp up fairly close to the parking lot because I could see lights through the trees. As we ran and scurried away from whoever was chasing us, we noticed the lights from the parking lot weren't just from the street lights, but also, to our horror, it was that rusty old white van we saw at the beginning. We hurried up the hill, just hoping this guy was alone. If he had an accomplice, that would be another person to deal with. As we reached the lot, we got into the bright street lights. I noticed my girlfriend's hand make a slight twitch, and her pace slowed down from that. I could tell she was turning her head to look at our attacker. I heard her gasp loudly, "Come on, don't look, we're almost there." She focused back, and we continued running in unison. This guy was getting closer, as I could hear the noise of the gravel intensify. I heard him wheezing and him barking, "Don't y'all think you'll get away." As we just made it past the van, we split. I handed her the keys so she could unlock and start the car, and I could throw all the gear in the trunk and we could make it out of this place. As I frantically laid the camping gear in the back seat and headed to the driver's side, that was when my body faced forward for the first time in a while. Every noise this guy was making was close and amplified now. With the car running, I kept my head down and put it in reverse, but curiosity got the better of me. In the brightness of my headlights, this man was a behemoth with a stern, wrinkled face with red, patchy hair, a goatee that had dirt and crud smeared over it. His eyes were fixated on us, like a scope magnifying on two 10-point bucks. He was wanting to kill. "Get back here," he barked, waving a baseball bat back and forth. I shook my head, and with that, I swerved out, and we were on the way out with our hearts racing. In the rearview mirror, we saw the man slam the bat in frustration. We drove to Waffle House and spent the rest of the early morning until sunrise there. My childhood best friend, Marie, and I were around 11 or 12 years old at this time. Marie's family had their own campsite in a provincial park about 2 hours from our hometown, and would spend the entire summer each year living in their camper out there. This particular summer, I was able to go and stay with them for a week, and we were excited to spend our time adventuring around the forest. On the last night that I was there, we decided we wanted to hurry down to the ice cream shop by the lake before it closed. It was early evening at this point, still pretty bright out, but beginning to lose light. The path we took was down a short slope right next to the main road, with maybe 10 feet of thick bush and trees in between. On the other side was the forest, with more tall, thick bushes. So we were walking along, not seeing a single other person on the path in front or behind us. We hear a sudden rustling and snapping of branches, similar to the sound of maybe a deer moving through the woods. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, but then the sound of running footsteps followed. Marie glances back and suddenly grabs my arm, urging me under her breath to not look back. At the same time, the running stops. I don't know why I didn't ignore her and get a look myself. I guess I could sense the very real fear in her voice and chose to listen. We both start to panic, getting that feeling when you're running up the stairs after turning the basement light off. We pick up speed as much as we can without breaking into a sprint, knowing the ice cream shop is only a minute walk away at this point. The path soon breaks and we are in the parking lot. Suddenly, Marie steers me hard to the left, heading towards the lake and the boat rental instead of continuing straight to the ice cream shop. And I go along with it silently, understanding ice cream is no longer an interest right now. We are both looking around, but it seems whatever scared her is no longer in sight at this point. Marie is clearly panicking at this point. Marie walks up to the boat rental and gets us a kayak, and we climb in and began to paddle out in the middle of the lake. As we paddle, she tells me that there was a man behind us and that the man had stopped running at us very abruptly upon making eye contact with her. He had been wearing a long black coat with the hood up, despite it being the middle of July, had a terrible smirk on his face, and she swore that he stopped running when she saw him put something shiny away in his coat. He appeared to have just emerged out of the bushes after we walked past, given the sounds we heard right before he came running onto the path. We reached the center of the lake and stopped paddling. I pull out my Nokia brick phone that my parents had given me just in case. I hand it to Marie and tell her to call her parents to come pick us up. As the phone rings, I see her look out past me to the shore and go pale, lifting a hand to point to what she's seeing. I turned and there was the man, stalking his way around the path that circled the edge of the lake, staring out at us. We sat in the middle of the lake and watched him do 2 full laps, never looking away from us, before finally disappearing. It took a few tries to get a hold of her family. We were freaking out so bad the whole time. As the sun got lower and lower, we did manage to have someone come with the truck, but by the time we reached the shore, it was pretty dark outside. I don't know what we would have done if we hadn't been able to call for a ride. Looking back, I don't know why we didn't just go to the ice cream shop, inform an adult there, and ask her parents to come get us then. But it worked out. We got back safe and thankfully never saw the man again. This isn't my story, but my best friend's. Me and Lilith decided to go to Blackwell. If you don't know, it's a very small area, just a few miles past Cadet, Missouri. It's considered very haunted, which really means there's a large amount of people who have had some insane shit happen to them there and can't explain it. So much has happened there, and if you are someone who feeds off of or experiences paranormal activity stronger or differently than others, you almost feel sick just entering the area. The feeling of dread is so overwhelming and your throat gets tight. We wanted to go to the old Blackwell Upper Bridge, which was shut down in the 80s after a terrible car accident took place. The bridge has, in ways, still been open to the public, but there is still random, awful accidents taking place. At about 12 to 1 a.m., and keep in mind that it was very dark and late, we turned on our GPS and tried to find this bridge. As we don't necessarily live close, we're just aware of the area. So our phones were charged and our GPS worked perfectly fine until we got about a mile out and everything stopped working. Our phones were acting weird and the GPS app shut itself off and would not let us open it. When it finally allowed us to click on the app, we typed in the address to the bridge and it said no coordinates found. Each time we tried to put in the address, nothing came up. But leading up to this point, there wasn't a problem. And mind you, our service was fine. It's not like we couldn't use the app at all. At this point, we're terrified because it's just us two in the middle of nowhere, and there isn't a single house or building in sight. We stopped at some stop sign to redirect our apps and try to fix the issue. And a little bit behind some trees, due to the road being curvy, we saw some lights. So we turned to head down the road and hopes for a gas station, house, a church, just absolutely anything. As we turn down the road, we see the source of the lights, and there is a motorcycle with all of its lights turned on, just sitting in the middle of the road, nobody around. Us being two women, obviously the first thing that pops into our head is sex trafficking, so we are panicked thinking it's a trap. We pull up a tiny bit closer, because as we are looking, we see one single shoe and an all-white helmet just on the ground by the bike. So at this point we call the cops, tell them we are in Blackwell, but have no idea exactly where we are, and that we are positive that we just found a wreck, and that there is no person in sight. We just explain to them what we can see. During all of this, we are trying to decide if we should get out of the car or not, because we are still scared, but not too scared knowing the cops are on their way. I look outside of Lilith's window, and there is a man covered in blood. He is missing a shoe, and his clothes are ripped. I verbally screamed as he scared me so badly. My hands felt numb. He was standing there looking inside of our vehicle. Lilith cracked the window a very tiny bit, just enough to ask him if he was okay, and he didn't mutter a single word. At this point, we are terrified. She has her concealed carry, so she grabs her gun as ready as possible to protect us if this man does anything too crazy. But in the back of my mind, I'm trying to convince myself maybe he's just stunned or freaked out because he just had an awful wreck. With the bike being in the middle of the road with the lights on and him covered in blood, this is when an all-black Ford Ranger truck pulls up behind our vehicle, and these two middle-aged men get out and try to see if everything is okay. And he grabs the guy's shoe and tries to talk to him and figure out what happened. Just a minute later, the paramedics and the state trooper pull up behind us. As I stay in the driver's seat, Lilith gets out to talk to the guys from the Ford Ranger. She tells the guy we're trying to find the Blackwell Bridge when we came across this wreck, and the guy proceeds to say, "I've lived in Blackwell my entire life. I grew up here, and I have no idea what bridge you're talking about." This was suspicious to me, because most people know of the Blackwell area, and I know a lot of people who have been to this bridge, including my own parents. While I talked to the state trooper, I told him that the guy was really weird when we were trying to see if he was alright, and I just told him what we experienced. Lilith had talked to the other cop, who gave her directions to get to the bridge, but he told us not to get on it because he's scared that something will happen. Then about 10 minutes go by, and everyone's cleared out. It was just me and Lilith back on the side of the road. We traveled down until we got on the old Upper Blackwell Bridge Road. We start to see the bridge in the distance, but we also see something else. The exact black Ford Ranger with the two guys who stopped at the wreck. The ones who told us they didn't know a single thing about the bridge. We hit it in reverse and left. I don't know if I'll ever try to find this bridge again.